Hello and welcome to the video. In this video, we're going to dive a little bit deeper into that 120 plus retention number in Portal and see how it's built. Let's dive in. By the end of this video, we will be able to understand how that 120 plus retention number is made, and we'll be able to explain the behaviors that are associated with those KPIs so we can start asking questions. So what other data creates 120 plus day retention? We know that our goal is to keep more members past 120 days, but what other information do we need to look at? Well, we need to look at our new joins and our churns. Our new joins are new folks who have signed memberships. It's those folks that are going to start at day 1, and we want to keep them past day 120. And then we need to look at churn. Churn is what happens when a member terminates their membership. So ideally, this would never happen. But if it must happen, we have churn that can occur before 120 days and churn that can occur after 120 days. If we have a member terminate their membership before 120 days, that's how our 120 plus day retention number goes down. And that's the other data that we need to keep an eye on as we look at this 120 plus day retention number. So if our goal with 120 plus day retention is to keep more members past that 120 days, we need to understand how we can make that happen. What other pieces of the puzzle do we need to understand? First, we need to understand new joins. We also need to understand members that are staying past 120 days, and then we need to understand churn, or members that are leaving. Let's see where we can find some of this data. Let's start with new joins. We're still in Studio Portal, and we're still in Studio Performance. But we are going to, with those tabs across the top, we are going to click on Business Health, which is generally our first tab, and then we are going to scroll down until we find Joins. And generally, we are already filtered by the current month, so we can see April of 2025 on our screen here. As we look at our joins, we can first see our total MTD, which is month to date. Here we see 455. If we want to understand how that 455 number is created, we can take a look at the columns to the right. For example, network, new join package holders month to date, and network, new join recurring month to date. And we can see a few more as we scroll across to the right. If we add up all of those columns, we'll be able to better understand where that 455 number is coming from. Now let's see where to find our churn. Again, we're going to go to the Studio Portal, and we're still in Studio Performance. Now we're going to head back to the Retention tab. We're going to scroll down until we see Member Loss. And again, we're filtered generally by the month we're in April of 2025 on the screen. It's important to recognize that member loss has more than just churn, but churn does come first. Here we can see churn month to date, the number 447, and next to that we can see the percentage. Right now it looks like 4.2. And of course, we want our churn percentage to stay under 5%. Now, before we move on from churn all the way, we want to be aware that this particular data doesn't tell us if these members joined less than 120 days ago. So if we have 22 churns in the month of April, we don't know that those folks joined in April. They could have joined 3 years ago and they just happen to end their membership now. So not all churn is created equal. We just need to be aware of that. Now, understanding where to find our KPIs and how to read that data is a great first start. It can indicate to us what aspects we need to focus on, but we can't just change a number like magic. Instead, we have to identify what behaviors are going to impact that number. So let's start with new joins. First, we have our members' behavior, and then we have our internal team's behavior. When it comes to new joins, our members can fall into they do or they do not. They're always going to start with showing interest, and then it falls into they book an intro or they don't. They show up for the intro or they don't. They sign for a membership or they don't. When it comes to our internal team's behavior, we have so many options. We have the way that we communicate with leads. We have the fact that we're creating an engaging and inviting intro process, that we connect OTF as the solution. We're matching the right membership with the right people. We're addressing any concerns or objections. And then we're getting folks set up with that OT beat, since people who are set up with that are more likely to join and stay. Okay, let's take a look at the behaviors that impact churn. For our members, we have utilization. We have members that are attending two or more classes, or they're not attending two or more classes, they're attending sporadically. And then we have folks that are using their OT beat, and then folks that are not. And these behaviors, that's what we can look at when it comes to members staying or members leaving. And then internally, with our team, matching the right membership with the right person on a continual basis. So recognizing when members may need a different membership, making those follow-up calls, pre-booking classes, that's an important one. Outreach to underutilized members, of course, developing that ongoing community and having real retention conversations, even when someone isn't at risk for leaving, making sure that we are still what they need for their fitness journey. We already have a little bit of complexity here because we have two main KPIs that feed into that 120 plus number. So let's lean into that complexity a little bit. What if we just focused on churn and we just drove really hard on making sure that our members stayed? What may happen? This is a dramatic rendition of what may happen. But if we only focus on churn, then we're getting no new members. But all of our members who signed are staying past that 120 days. What's happening in the short term is our 120 plus day retention number skyrockets. What happens in the long term is we don't necessarily have a 120 plus retention because we don't have any new joins. So there's no one to monitor, which in the long term is a very bad thing. Now, what if we only focus on new joins? We put all of our efforts into leads and intros and signing as many people as possible. Then maybe we get 100 new members that month, but little to none of those new members stay past 120 days. Maybe they didn't get the right membership that they needed. Maybe we're not making those follow-up calls. We're not developing that community. This is bad in the short term and the long term. So what do we do when we're faced with this complexity? We have two major KPIs that are feeding into a larger one. Well, what we can do is we can look at these similarities. We can see matching the right member with the right membership. We see a trend when it comes to communicating, when it comes to having conversations, outreach, community, and connections. These are the behaviors that exist in both of these KPIs that are going to drive that number up. So instead of just focusing on tasks, we rather focus on these behaviors that's really going to help us move forward. So again, as we think critically about KPIs, we want to think, what is our goal? And now that we're diving into the complexities, we have three questions to ask ourselves. What's the goal with 120 plus day retention? What's our goal with new joins? And what's our goal with churn? And then behaviors. Now we're getting into the meat of things. What member or internal behaviors create these numbers? And then, we focus this time on what other KPIs can impact those numbers and how do they impact it. For example, not all churn is created equal. So we want to consider what group and demographics of members we're focusing on. Ultimately, though, what we're learning in this series is that we can't control a number. Instead, we impact behavior. So we're looking at those behaviors that we can control, that we can impact, that make a positive impact then and drive those KPIs. So as before, we're keeping an eye on that 120 plus day retention data, but we're doing it through a new lens because we're considering the importance of new joins and churn. And as always, we're locking in on the behaviors that we can control in order to positively impact our KPIs. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you soon.